We all love seeing our favorite characters back at it. That's why nostalgia bait is so profitable, right? And we've talked about it many times. When nostalgia, it can be great when used wisely. And other times it's cheap and awful. It's mostly cheap and awful a lot of the time, which is the case here in this return. Beverly Hills Cop, the fourth installment of the Beverly Hills Cop franchise. Axel F, right. 30 years removed from the previous Beverly Hills Cop. And Marvin, we did make you watch the original Beverly Hills Cop. Somehow you had never seen it. That's insane. The band is back together. Eddie Murphy's back as Axel Foley. We got Billy Rosewood back as with Judge Reinhold playing him. John Ashton back as John Taggart. Paul Reiser as Chief Jeffrey Friedman, and Bronson Pinchot as Surge, which stole the show for me.
Man.
And then newcomers, Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Bobby Abbott, and Kevin Bacon, who was like the most obvious villain in the history of villains. I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I'm not going to lie. I did not think it was going to be good because it's Netflix, and Netflix has a terrible track record. It's a 30-year-old franchise being resurrected, which are never good. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was funny when it was funny. You got all like the nostalgia stuff that you would hope for in a movie like this, but none of it seemed like overbearing and like in your face of like, oh, remember this?
Just a couple of times, but mostly, it was just.
It was a few times, but it didn't pull you from the movie. It was just like, it was there. It did a really good job of being respectful to the past, bringing it into the present day. I don't think it did anything for like the future of the franchise, but I don't think that that's what its intent was.
No,
thank God. No. I agree. It was a good watch. I was expecting it to be shit, but it wasn't. It felt, for me, it felt very 80s, like from the plot. Which is good for a movie like this. I was very welcome to that.
This felt like an 80s movie to me. It wasn't just the music either, because in the beginning I was like, you're gonna get all the old music and this that, but it didn't. It felt like an 80s movie, and
that comical like 80s not too serious at all. Yeah.
It felt like an 80s cop movie where it's like, and they even joked about it too, where, there was some, I liked the scene between him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt where Levitt was like, you think you're just going to emasculate me and make me forget about like our conversation? Because that's like such an 80s trope. So I think they did a really good job of making it feel like an 80s movie, but also like poking fun at 80s tropes.
Yes.
The code switch valet was like my favorite thing.
That was my favorite scene. Oh my God, that shit was so funny.
Yeah, I just thought it was just really good.
I thought this was great. I went in not sure because I have obviously, I think this is the original is one of the greatest movies of all time, and the sequel is one of the greatest sequels to a movie of all time. I'd put Beverly Hills Cop and Beverly Hills Cop 2 up there on that pedestal. Like that's how good. I think 3 is a travesty of cinema. It has some funny parts.
Yeah.
But holy fuck, did they just go off the rails? Because that was when you were getting out of the 80s and you were getting into the ridiculous of 90s action. And I felt that way a little bit watching this movie sometimes. Like going towards the end, I'm like, okay, like these old fucks and this action is just a little bit unbelievable. But then I'm like, but I'm watching Beverly Hills Cop, and that's like what the whole point of it is. It's kind of being out of your element and being a little bit more ridiculous than it should be. But I thought it was great, funny, hilarious. I loved everybody being there. Some of it felt forced, the nostalgia, but some of it felt really good. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a great homage.
And I recently rewatched 2 and 3 to prepare for this. I watched 2 and 3 back to back. And the drop in tone and energy from 2 to 3 is like so stark that it's shocking.
It is. It really is.
It's a very weird movie. It's like lethargic. This felt like a return to form for me for the most part.
Yeah.
My only gripe with it is that I think a lot of the dialogue was very stiff.
Sometimes it wasn't the story even too. Like, come on, Taggart. Billy Rosewood is your best friend. And you're like, I've known this guy forever. And it's like,
yeah.
I mean, we're getting into the cheese of like 80s police bullshit. So sometimes you gotta
I think this movie was safe. Like it didn't really do anything.
It was, yes.
That different. I don't think the story was like kind of weak. Like, okay, we need an excuse to get Axel Foley back to Beverly Hills. All right, he has a daughter who's in trouble. Okay, that's fine. But beyond that, they like
estranged daughter. Yeah.
They attempted to like sprinkle in some like character building and like story elements that like just didn't really matter or go anywhere. Like her relationship with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character. What was the point of that? Her and Axel's like estranged relationship. It's like very surface level. It's like, well, you know, you just left. You sent like, okay. And he explains for like 1 second, like, well, this gang was after me and I was worried. It's like, but okay, fine. Does that matter? No. The stuff we said with Billy and Taggart, it was just like, it didn't matter. It was kind of silly that they even chose to do that because, like you said, they've been best friends for life. Like, you're not just going to assume your partner of 30 years is batshit crazy all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's wild.
The main plot was like fine, you know, just a dirty cop fucking doing dirty cop stuff.
Like you said, like he walks in the room and you're like, oh yeah, Kevin Bacon's the bad guy.
I knew Kevin Bacon was the bad guy from the trailer. Kevin Bacon's not in your movie to not be a bad guy. Like, he's just the bad guy. It just is what it is. So, but that was fine.
Unless he's saving a town dancing.
Yeah, but that's fine because the movie didn't make it like an effort to like try to trick the audience into thinking that he was not a dirty cop. And that's funny because that's like Axel's character at this point. He's like so experienced that he's like, that guy was wearing, you know, $1,500 suit. Yeah. He's obviously dirty, right?
I love that they stayed true to that too. Like he still did some detecting.
He's a good cop.
Had to do a little work. Still figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
You still see that. You don't see that in a lot of cop movies.
Yeah.
Thing.
Some of the acting, the acting and the dialogue was like really bizarre to me, and it was more in like the first half of the movie. Eddie Murphy gives off like a weird vibe to me, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's his age or if how he's being directed or if it's the writing or what. But in this movie, he went from like really stiff, like sort of just like casual dialogue to being Eddie Murphy, and it was like very like in and out. It was weird to me. It seemed like a really stark contrast between the scenes that are written dialogue and what he's just ad-libbing.
Well, that was one of the great things about the first one that he talked about is like
there's all
like 15 it was like 15 different scripts thrown together that they had to ad-lib just to figure it out, and so it was basically just him.
But that's why you get Eddie Murphy.
This you could tell where like it was and it wasn't Eddie Murphy, where like sometimes like when they're sitting in the beginning and they're talking about hockey, like it's a little bit dry in the beginning and it starts to warm up and you're like, okay, that was kind of funny. Okay, that was kind of funny. But like most of it just feels a little dry.
I thought it was really evident when he was ad-libbing versus when he wasn't. And those were all the funny moments of the movie.
The like, creative stuff,
He's always Eddie Murphy. Like every role, it's not like he's playing like an actual... For me, it's just like he's just Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah, I mean, you go watch The Golden Child, and that's just him being himself.
And that's
throughout the whole movie.
That was the like draw of these '80s comedy icons: Eddie Murphy and
yes,
you know, Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. Like they're just themselves. And I don't know 100% that it was improv that he was doing.
One specific line, I'm like, there's no way they would write that.
Which
it was
one was
something
that?
Random too. Like they were getting into a van or a truck or something. He was like, yeah, we got to get the one with the little shit on top or something like that. The little top. No, he said little top shit. And I was like, there's no way they wrote that.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the
He
script.
said that's Billy's truck, the one with the little top
with
shit.
Little top shit.
I do remember
no
that.
way. I was just busted out laughing. It was like the hardest I probably laughed in the movie.
Everything he said was, that's why I think a lot of it was improv, because that was always the funniest stuff. But that was my only real gripe of the movie. I've seen some weird criticisms so far. People being like, well, it's not as good as the first two films. It's like, dude, this should never be an expectation for any legacy sequel of beloved franchises, for that matter, to be as good as the originals. Like, that's an impossibility that can never be met and should never be used as a litmus test when watching movies like that.
I agree. It's also not the point.
Yeah.
It's not for it to be better. It's just...
Now, I'm not suggesting that movie fans should accept bad movies, right? But no legacy sequel, no matter how good and respectful it is, even Ghostbusters Afterlife, that I love, will never capture the exact same magic we felt when we were younger, because it's part of being younger that those movies are good. That's why nostalgia bias is a thing, right? And the other criticism I've seen was like, and this happens all the time, this happened with Ghostbusters Afterlife, too much nostalgia. I think that's dumb. It's a dumb criticism. That's why we're all watching at the end of the day.
Right.
We want to feel the warm and fuzzies again. We want to relive that sense of magic when we can.
Like I said, a little of it felt forced, but a lot of it felt really like just well timed.
I was smiling listening to Bob Seger's Shakedown when he was driving the snowplow through the streets of Detroit.
I can see how some people would say some of those things felt a little forced.
Totally. But yeah.
It was all great nostalgia for me.
It's got a 6.6 on IMDb. What you got?
6.6 is a little low, I think. This is probably like another 7.5.
I'd give it a 7, yeah. Not quite a 7.5, 7.
I was very pleasantly surprised by it. Again, it was made with love and respect for those movies that time period. My only gripe was a little bit of the stiff acting. I would give it a 7.5 for sure. And I think another bar setter for how to revive legacy IPs.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Step 1 for reviving: don't try to set up for another sequel.
Unless you have a legitimately good cast of characters. Yeah. If I'm in charge, 3 rules to follow when making a sequel to a legacy IP. Respect it. Don't do the member berries, the nostalgia bait, and let it cripple your story. Like, make it only improve your story. And don't feel the need to have to create more. Like, this is probably a one and done. And that's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that's fine.
Totally fine.
Well, they've been trying to do this for a long time. It was a TV movie, I think, a while back.
Yeah.
Did.
Like, it's not groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be. It's not gonna create another universe. Like, we're not gonna get a Beverly Hills Cop universe out of it, or a spin-off or this or that, the other thing. It just
don't need it.
It just is what it is. It's like, hey, here's some beloved characters together again.